you're looking for.
Okay, it says you are live on YouTube.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Okay.
We will, on the agenda, there's two amendments to the agenda. We don't need a selection of chair. And the approval of the minutes are for April the 9th, not April the 7th as in the agenda. Can we have an approval, a vote on approval of the agenda as amended?
I vote yes.
I
Carried?
vote yes.
Okay, if there's any disclosure of interest from the members of the committee, you can announce it now. Hearing none, the purpose of the meeting is to present consideration of two applications for minor variances for two properties abutting each other. These applications are a condition of consent for B19/142 and B19/143. And we'll let Carl do the minor variance application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. For those watching at home, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Carl Granke, the Township Planner, and I'll be speaking to these applications. So in this case, as Tom had indicated, we have two minor variance applications affecting two properties. However, the planning report and the presentation has been bundled into a single one, since ultimately they are entirely dependent on each other. So in this case, this is an exercise. What we're looking at here is essentially the final piece of a long puzzle that involves the correction of some title issues and the adjustment of lot boundaries to properly position existing buildings on their lots. So this is actually a very unusual minor variance in that it's not intended to accommodate development or new development. It's intended to effectively recognize development that's already there. So in this case, were the two properties we have on Rideau Avenue, 55 Rideau Avenue and 68 4th Street are both are developed, one with a semi-detached and one with an existing single house that's been there for probably about 100 years. The semi is much newer. It was recently discovered, unfortunately, that there's a couple of lot line encroachments. So the house is situated on partly on the adjoining property, and the house and the semi-detached is partially within the municipal road allowance. So over the last, after working staff and agents for the for all of the property owners have met over the last little while, and the solution they found was basically a series of consent applications, severance applications, where lot lines on all of these properties were adjusted slightly just to make sure that every building was on its own lot. Everybody had their own appropriate yard requirement. So that was viewed as, and that consent process was necessary for this to happen. Otherwise, we still have that situation where there were these encroachments. So the Lanark County Land Division Committee is the approval authority for the severance applications. They approved the severance applications, but one of the conditions of these severances was that minor variances be obtained to recognize any non-compliances in the lot configurations. So all of these properties are zoned general residential, special exception 2, that allow singles and semi-detached with various setback requirements, lot coverage requirements, and so on. This is a long-standing developed area. Everything's always a little bit tight to the lot line, and unfortunately, I don't think it's possible to fix these lot lines and create complying situations that are entirely compliant in zoning. So based on the survey that was completed in support of these applications, there were a number of non-compliances in terms of the lot setbacks that had to be corrected, and that includes for 55 Rideau Street, recognize a reduced interior side yard setback and front yard setback, and also for 6 and 8 4th Street, recognize a reduced exterior side yard setback, reduce the minimum front yard setback, rear yard setback, and increase the maximum lot coverage and reduce the minimum lot area. So a lot of relief that's required, but ultimately this is intended to accommodate development that already exists. So this application is being presented to the committee as essentially the final condition of the severance approval. The committee has to support these, or the committee has to approve these variances in order for the development or for the severances to be complete. So the applications were circulated to agencies and neighbors as required by the Planning Act. The only feedback we've received was from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority that has no objection to either of these applications. We haven't heard from any abutting property owners. Ultimately, this layout here, I understand, is a product that was negotiated and agreed to by both property owners. They're the ones who'd be the most affected by this. So the committee, when they're looking at a minor variance application, there's 4 tests outlined under the Planning Act that need to be satisfied. Does this proposal meet the general intent of the official plan? Does this proposal meet the general intent of the zoning bylaw? Is this proposal desirable and appropriate? And is this proposal minor? So I would like to reiterate to the committee that these applications facilitate the reorientation of the lot lines affecting the property. So while the committee should not feel obligated to grant zoning relief to fix a building mistake of many years ago, in the opinion of staff, the broader public interest is better served in this instance by recognizing the requested setbacks, which would allow the completion of the consents and allowing each building to be situated on its own lot. So this would allow the greater use and enjoyment of each lot by its occupants without negative impact on abutting properties. So we're not introducing new development. We're not changing the use on any of the subject properties. At the end of the day, if we left things in place as they are right now, we would have a more substantial zoning issues in terms of these encroachments. So broadly speaking, this is a step in the right direction. The official plan doesn't really get into these sorts of prescriptive details about performance standards, but at the end of the day, it wants to see development that makes sense within its neighborhood. And finally, the final test of for the committee is this proposal minor? And at this point, in my opinion, it is minor in that it's recognizing the existing condition. So based on a review of our policies and consideration of this unique planning context, in our opinion, these applications do satisfy the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and we recommend approval with the condition established in the committee's decision for both of them that this application shall be read to accommodate the placement of structures existing at the time of this decision only. So this application can't be read to accommodate future additions. That would have to be looked at on its own. That's if that ever happens in the future, and that can come back to this committee. But in our opinion, these applications are a logical final step to effectively correcting an unusual situation here and allowing the completion of the lot line adjustments. So I'll pause there and I'll turn the floor back to the chair.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much, Carl. Yeah, I was out there today and looked at the thing. I looked at your diagrams first, and then I had to drive around the block twice and figure it all out because it didn't show the neighboring house, which threw me off completely when I looked at the diagram and then looked at the neighboring house, not on the application, the one next to it. So anyway, I've seen what the problem is and whatnot. Now, is there any presentation by anybody else in attendance at this meeting at this time? Hearing none, is there any questions from other members of the committee? Go ahead.
I don't really have a question because I went through it here and read it and listened to the comments from Carl. and read his comments. The only question I would have pertaining to any more of these that we do, if we could get them a little sooner than one day before the meeting, it would give people still working here that are on the committee time to get out and see all the situations. That's my only concern.
I agree with you 100%, Jim.
I was just so busy, I couldn't. I had to go by the diagrams and everything on this one.
Yeah, well, the diagram really explains, driving by it, all you do is see the buildings.
Yeah.
But you don't see the lot lines or anything, so.
No, in this case, it's fine. It's just sometimes it's nice to be able to go and take a little visit.
I agree. I like it a week ahead.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier than that this way.
You got any comments, Brian?
I concur with you guys. I would like that a little bit earlier. I was very fortunate. I live 2 blocks from where this was happening. So, and it's been this way for 20 years. So easy for me to go down, walk the property. I know the occupants, so everything's good.
Okay.
Except the timeliness of when we get our information.
Right.
COVID appreciated.
Okay. Okay, are we ready for a vote on it then?
I am.
I'm ready to vote, Tom.
Okay, I'm in decision. I am completely agree with the decision to allow it. So we'll call for the vote. I'll say I'm in favor.
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor as well.
All right, the decision is carried. Anybody in the audience on the YouTube, want to leave their names if they want a formal notice of the I guess. And Carl, I'll let you wind this up with, I know the explanation is not going to be the same as the other ones because there's nothing going to change after except the lot lines, but I guess they have to wait for their time frame before the severances can be completed. Go ahead, Carl.
Mr. Chair, that is correct. Committee's decision is always subject to a 20-day appeal period. That's in legislation. We don't have any control over that, but we'll get that notice. We'll get that notice out right away and signatures from the committee members. I apologize about the I guess the timeliness of the report. Certainly, you'll get it earlier. You'll get it earlier next time. I'd also like to acknowledge Paul Howard representing the applicants in the meeting this afternoon, in case if he has anything to add above and beyond what was already discussed.
Well, thank you, Carl. There are just a couple of comments. Thank you to the committee. I think the decision is well taken. You might ask how something like this would happen, but when you think about it, it was that 100-year-old building that the measurements were taken from to build the building on Rideau. And if the 100-year-old building had been in the right spot, there would have been no issue here. And as Carl has said, this really doesn't change anything on the ground. It just legitimizes a mistake which has been made. The second thing is that you may have noticed that on the diagrams, part of that property on 4th Street encroaches on the road, actually encroaches on road allowance. And we have had a bylaw passed by the township authorizing the encroachment. So that piece is completed as well. So thank you to the committee and thank you to Carl. And I'm here with Steve Morrison, actually, who is the owner of one of the properties. So flash Steve here. Just we wanted to be here to make sure that you realize that we were interested and appreciate your input.
Thank you very much. I guess is there any ideas if we're having a next meeting on books there, Carl, or not? Anything coming up?
I'll turn that over to the Secretary Treasurer if we have any applications ready to go or in the pipeline.
Oh, everybody. My name is Mary Kirkham. I'm in here temporarily under contract, working with Carl in the planning department. There is no other applications that we have received so far. We've received some applications for site plan control and development agreements, but nothing for minor variances at this date.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. I guess we'll adjourn the meeting. All in favor of adjourning the meeting?
I'll move to adjourn the meeting, Tom.
Second,
Okay. Everybody vote. I'm in favor.
I'm in favor.
David?
Carried. Now, for signing, Mary.
I have the decision all finished.